Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the budget hearing for the town of Webster. This is for the 2022 town warrant. I'm going to suggest that we start with the Pledge of Allegiance this evening, so if you please rise. Emmett, why don't you lead us in this?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excellent, so thank you. We're going to work our way tonight through the draft warrant that's being presented, and the budget will be presented by the select board. And then at the conclusion of that, we'll come back to warrant Article 1. Warrant Article 1 is to choose all necessary town officers. So if there's anybody here in the House tonight who's running for an office, they'll have an opportunity to present their candidacy to everybody here and make sure that folks know. So let's move right on. Warrant Article 2, if you look at the handout, is going to actually appear on the ballot. So on March 8th, when you come to vote, on the paper ballot, warrant Article 2, which is the adoption of the Wetlands and Watershed Protection Ordinance, which is an amendment to the existing zoning ordinance as proposed by the planning board. That question will be on the ballot, and it will require you to vote on that directly. So that business will be conducted on election day, not at town meeting, just to be clear with everybody. I'm not certain if anybody tonight wants to speak to that article or have comments on that article, but it is going to be appearing on the ballot.
I guess I'll just briefly say, if you have questions or want clarification on it, the full copy of it is available on the website, and the planning board has been going through that, so find your closest planning board member and ask them any questions.
Perfect. All right, so let's move on. After we've had the election for town officers and the vote on the ordinance, we will be holding the annual business meeting. Currently, the plan is to hold that on Saturday, March 12th, starting at 10 o'clock here in the hall. And we are doing our best to make sure that it is a traditional town meeting set up as it normally has been in the past. So that is the goal, that is the objective that we're all working toward right now. If there's a change in that, we'll certainly let everybody in town know what those changes are, but that is the current plan. So warrant Article 3, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,637,400 for general municipal operations. This article does not include appropriations contained in special or individual articles addressed separately, and it will require a majority of vote of those attending on the 12th. Presenting the budget for general municipal operations will be the chair of the select board, Dave Hemingway.
All right, so the members of the select board that you see in front of you were all elected with a specific message to keep an eye on the budget while getting things done. We believe we've done that and that you'll agree. Overall, the operating budget is up a bit less than 1%, and other warrant item spending is down about 2%. So the total to be raised by the town is down from last year. For the past few years, the town spent down the unassigned fund to offset or artificially lower your taxes during the pandemic. So unfortunately, don't expect a tax bill reduction this year, despite our overall decrease in spending. You'll hear more about the other funds as we move through the warrant articles, including how they have now flipped back to normal again for road work. So let me give you the operating budget details. For the operating budget, we trimmed the items we could and expected to end up down year to year. That expectation included planned increases for employee compensation that will help the town come closer to competitive market salaries, new contracted services to better create records for emergency services calls, increases in shared services costs such as dispatch, long overdue increases for road work, adding employee dental coverage, as well as increases for this being a larger election year. With all of that, we still planned for the budget to decrease in size. However, as you're likely all painfully aware, the cost of goods, especially energy, has dramatically risen as of the new year. We also found that prior budgets didn't reflect the double contracts held with the assessors, only accounting for one of those contracts, so we had to add a general assessing line to the budget. Those items drove last-minute increases to the budget. In addition, we are now showing the highway block grant as an increase back to pre-pandemic values based on communication with the state. But this is both an estimate and a 100% revenue to spend match, so it won't actually affect taxes. Some other lines, such as the Energy Committee, aren't actually changes in the overall budget from last year's spend, but are putting things like municipal memberships in a more appropriate line item attributed to them. In total, we ended up with an increase of 0.7% for the operating budget, though down in overall town spending, which should serve us well as we continue to work on moving projects forward and streamlining how the town runs.
So at this time, are there any questions from the budget printout that's been provided that folks would like to have answered? Tara?
I guess I have a question about the dental insurance. It's $5,500. Do the employees pay any towards that insurance?
For the details on insurance, I'm not completely sure how much I'm allowed to say based on confidentiality, so I'll let Dana speak to all of this as he has helped in talking with all of the insurance companies.
It's an easy answer, yes. It'd be 15% of the cost.
Okay, because, I mean, $5,500 for dental is, you know, that's a big chunk added to our budget, you know, and I'm just surprised by it, so, because the health insurance is getting pretty high, but I know dental insurance is hard to get for any job, so, and I guess I'm not allowed to ask how many employees are getting it.
The number of employees that we have that are full-time employees
So it's-
and or accounted that way.
It's full-time employees?
Currently, yes.
I have a question. There's $500 for the Kennebec Community Center. They disbanded. That's now part of Concord Boys and Girls Club.
I thought they sent us a nice letter too. But maybe that was before that.
I guess we didn't know that, so if that's the case, we
It's
would not.
as of like the end of December or in January
That's good to
2nd
know.
was when it
That would
Thank you.
explain it.
was official.
This is the Pennacook, what was it called, Pennacook?
That's
Kennebec
the-
Community Center.
Okay, thank you.
So along those lines, I know we're not going line by line, but that's really good information. Thank you for bringing that up. We would have found that out later when we went to try to write a check and found they didn't exist to send one to. But that's also something that you'll see, for example, with Webster Soccer. That no longer exists. It's now a regional thing. So that's also why that line item is 0.
Other questions on the budget?
I guess I do have another question before we go any further. I was wondering, the, the financial administrator, 12% raise, are there hours being added to that?
Yes.
Okay, do we really need more hours added to it?
I'll go ahead and again default to Dana here, but the short of it is, yes, we have definitely made good use of the financial administrator.
It's to allow flexibility in the times that we really need the financial administrator for more hours, more than throughout the year, but there are times of the year that we do need more help than others, and that's what it is to
So it's
accommodate.
not like it's a flat 30 hours a week, it's when needed?
Correct.
Basically,
Fill out
yes.
like a time card or something like that?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else on the budget? Warrant Article 3.
Well, back on to number 9,
Oh, yeah, they haven't come to that. You're talking about,
As part of the.
Just number 3.
This is warrant article 3.
yeah, he's.
The
he's just talking about
budget
that.
printout, yep.
All right.
They'll go down. Thank you.
Are we good? Are we ready to move on? All right, perfect. So we're going to move on to warrant article number 4. Warrant article 4 is to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $364,500 to be added to the following established capital reserve funds under RSA 35-1, and a majority vote is required. Medical equipment is $6,000, fire department air packs $20,000, emergency apparatus $65,000, fire department mobile communications $10,000, police cruiser $21,000, highways and roads $125,000, bridge culvert improvements $75,000. Public safety building $5,000, town hall improvements $5,000, town office equipment $5,000, Webster Hopkinton transfer station $4,000, fire department dry hydrant repairs $2,000, fire department bunker gear $2,500, highway equipment $7,500, police equipment $1,500, and highway land building fund $10,000. Speaking to this tonight will be Select Person D. Blake.
Okay. The large deduction in your capital reserve funding from the previous year is primarily driven by the swapping of funding for the highways and roads CRF and the road preservation expendable trust funds back to normal. We no longer need funding, further funding going into the reappraisal CRF until possibly after next year when the full town reevaluation is completed and a new contract will be needed.
Are there questions about the warrant article 4 adding $364,500 to the capital reserve funds as previously read?
I guess my question, and I talked to Russell a little bit about it the other day, the bridge, the White Plains bridge deal, and he gave me a little bit of information, but how much is that bridge going to cost us? I didn't check and see how much we already have in the bridge and culvert department, but you know, do we have a ballpark what that might cost now? Because I know we've changed vendors.
I know that somebody like Dana will be able to get you those figures. I don't know if he has that in front of him at this point. What I can say is that we are expecting the amount that's in the CRF to be able to cover what we will owe for White Plains, as well as the Clothespin Bridge. We are hoping that in the future we will be able to use some other funding towards these bridges that has been coming out of the federal and state governments. If that's the case, then we will be able to stop funding it in the future and then use what is left instead of towards these, towards the bridge that goes into Boscawen, that we would joint deal with Boscawen. If we have to cover all of it out of the CRFs, this puts us in an appropriate position to be able to do that and continue saving for another year or two, and then be able to handle the Boscawen Bridge.
Okay, because I know, I was at a couple of select meetings when we were talking about the White Plains. And like I said, I understand now that we've changed engineers, et cetera. Do we have...
Also, just, sorry to cut you off for 1 second. I'll let you go ahead again. Also, for details on how those bridges and the plans and payments and how that works into yearly expenditures and stuff for the reserve and trust funds, those are all covered in by the capital improvement plan, and there's a committee that meets and gives us that information.
Okay. Now, we had, we had an idea of what we were getting for a culvert. They're still working on that, right? Exactly what they're gonna do, because
Yep.
we don't know yet. And I did ask about paying the previous person, because you were talking about that at the meeting. But I wasn't at the last couple of meetings, so
Nothing has changed.
nothing's changed. Shoot, there was something I was gonna ask about that. Oh, I know what I was gonna ask. For years, the previous town administrator had put in for grants. And they kept saying, oh, we got denied this, denied that. Was that a real thing? Was there a grant that we could have gotten for that? Was that, because every year they said, oh, we got denied.
There are always lots of grants for lots of things.
Yeah.
And I know that the town has put in for several of them. Whether it's those specific ones, I don't know.
Okay. Because I know it was supposedly for that. And just, I don't know if they, it's stupid to look back, but we were always told, we got denied. So I didn't know if there was really a grant, but it probably takes too long to put in for it now. And now that we're on a roll, maybe we can just get this thing done and be done with it. So, okay, thanks.
John?
It is my understanding, I may be wrong, but Mitchie Corp has taken over the engineering and everything on Nice Meadow Bridge.
Yeah.
Are they gonna use all of the engineering and everything of the previous engineering of what, that bridge or what?
No, not to my knowledge, they're not using any of it.
They're not gonna use any of it.
They told us they were unable to use the plans as were
So-
provided.
My point is, so here's the second engineering of a bridge from this same engineer that has gone down the road at the expense of this town. I do not blame this engineer. I blame the board of selectmen. And I blame the previous selectmen, all the way back to Clothespin Bridge when she engineered that bridge. You know what? You don't even need to grease it.
John, that's really inappropriate.
Yeah, that's.
No, it is inappropriate of the
John.
Board of Selectmen not looking out for the well-being of this town.
John, we
That is
understand,
your job.
John, you're out of order. We understand your
No.
frustration,
No.
okay? And
They
you're-
needed
and
to fire
voicing that
this
appropriately is
engineer.
okay. But
They needed
please
to
have a
fire-
seat and express yourself appropriately.
They needed to fire this engineer when she did Clothespin Bridge. They did not do it. They did not oversee this woman on this job. She's cost this town $500,000. I don't like it. Now we're gonna have to pay another engineer to redo this all over again. We're gonna have $1.5 million of engineering. I blame this Board of Selectmen and the previous selectmen for not doing their job and overseeing the money that we're spending. I asked this board roughly back in November at a selectmen meeting, how much have you paid this woman? All three of you at the exact same time said nothing. I did a 91A. You spent $20,000 on her. Did I do that with 91A, Dana, to this town?
I think you had asked what we had spent over the, sorry.
I think you had asked over the years what we had spent,
And it was
that must the
20,000.
figure I gave you, yeah. I don't remember the amount, but
So if you could not give me a straight answer on how much you spent, how can I trust and believe what you have here to say tonight?
Any problem with me
Well,
responding?
What I'm gonna say
Go
is,
ahead.
and there again, I came into this in a late fashion, in a sense. And right out of the gate, we discussed breaking the stick. But she had this time already put into it, and we didn't want to prolong the situation. And then what I had understood is Wendy had paid her, or not you, but the town had paid her 2,000 something towards that project. And we've all come to the agreements that, you know, and she wouldn't come to any meetings, she wouldn't show up, she wouldn't
on
she wouldn't
Zoom.
call, she wouldn't do anything, because, you know, just like any time in business, if you've got something and you're close to having it done, you know, you don't want to spend more money to redo something. But at the same token, she threatened that if we needed to pay, or she wasn't going to do this, or she wasn't going to do that. And we've, you know, unless legal tells us we have to, at this point, we're not paying any of her bills. So we tried to get an estimate from the people that are doing the bridge down here. I think I deserve a little respect here, John, okay? All right?
The question-
But my thing to you is, we said, we're done with this lady, because we're gonna move on. I mean, this is ridiculous, you know? And so we got quotes, and Mitchie came in, and they can get it done. I think the quote was for 14,000 something.
To have the.
Yeah,
permit.
but they can't use any of her stuff, but she's not gonna give any of our stuff because we haven't paid her for anything she's done. And even so, DES didn't like what she had done.
No, my point was, when I asked you how much you paid her, all three of you said nothing.
Well, at the time, I didn't think we
All
had
three
paid her
of you
anything.
said that, all at the same time. So I did a 91A,
So,
and then I come up, find out you paid her 20,000.
so let me try to help out and explain this here. So we as the board have not paid her.
You are the selectman, you
As
represent the town.
John,
Okay.
let him answer the
we as the
question.
board and as our current sitting select board and select people here have not paid her. Previous boards have paid her, and we thought the town and previous boards had a contract with her. That was actually not true. There was no contract. And as a result, when we started asking about one and trying to do things, we did exactly what you did. We got offended over the problem. And so we decided to try and fix it. We tried to work in best faith to fix it with her because we have not had those specific bad experiences with her that it sounds like have happened in the past. That did not go well. So we made requests for quotes from multiple companies and are moving forward with the least expensive option that also sounds like it's the best option. And so we are absolutely trying to do the best thing we can with all of our money and do that in the most reasonable manner. I apologize that as boards, we can't see everything 2020 in the future, so previous boards didn't necessarily get it right. But we can't change that. We can only do the best that we can now.
Well, when I guess Tolpin Bridge is not the future. When you spent $250,000, went down the river, I guess you can call that future. I'm done.
Are there any other questions on warrant Article 4? All right, we're going to move on to warrant Article 5. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $226,000 to be added to the following established expendable trust funds per RSA 31:10-A, majority vote is required. Road preservation, $200,000, technology fund, $5,000, forest fire, $2,000, fire department equipment, $5,000, highway, $5,000, legal for the town of Webster, $1,000, compensated absences, $1,000, municipal property maintenance, $5,000, welfare, $1,000, police vehicle maintenance, $1,000. And speaking to this tonight will be select person Marlo Herrick.
The large increase in the ETF funding is primarily driven by the swapping of funding for the highway and roads, CRF, and the road preservation, ETF, back to normal. We're also adding a little to each of the overages type funds to the account for the general increase of prices on everything, so funds can retain their effectiveness in the event they become needed.
Are there any questions about warrant Article 5? seeing none, we're going to move on to warrant Article 6. Warrant Article 6 reads to see if the town will vote to establish a contingency fund for the current year under the provisions of RSA 31:98-A for unanticipated expenses that may arise, and further to raise and appropriate the sum of $15,954 to put into the fund. This sum is to come from the unassigned fund balance. Any appropriation left in the fund at the end of the year will lapse to the general fund. This is an individual warrant article, and majority vote is required. Presenting this tonight is our town administrator.
This is an article that you've had for the past few years. It basically allows the town to have these funds put aside in the event of an issue that was unanticipated as per the state law. It is basically 1% of the operating budget minus what you're spending for payments on notes or bonds, which in this case it comes to $15,954, and it does come out of the fund balance and not by this year's taxes.
Are there questions about warrant Article 6? All right, let's move on to warrant Article number 7. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to help offset the cost of the bond for funds to repair dam passed at the Pillsbury Lake Water District meeting held August 5th, 2006. Majority vote is required, and presenting this tonight will be Select Person D. Blake.
All right, this has been on the warrant for Webster for quite a few years, since 2006, and basically the dam dropped and the water disappeared out of Pillsbury Lake. So that's why they got a new dam, and we try to give them $10,000 every year to help pay off that debt.
Dee, did you say how many more years of dam payments we have?
Just a couple, I think two.
I think 2026 is their bond.
2026? Oh,
I think it
4.
was a 20-year bond.
Okay.
Are there any questions on the dam warrant?
Sorry.
I can only say that a couple more years apparently, so I just wanted to ask. All right, seeing none, we're going to move on to warrant Article number 8. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $37,000 for the purchase of a 2022 police cruiser and related equipment, with $37,000 to come from the police cruiser capital reserve fund created for that purpose. This is a special warrant article, and majority vote is required. Speaking to this article tonight will be our Chief of Police, Steve Adams.
So we're looking to purchase a 2022 cruiser to replace a 2016 car that we have. With idling time, it's got 166,000 miles on it right now. To run that car for another year, it would cost us more in repairs than it was worth. If we were to lose a motor or a transmission alone is $8,000. If we lost the motor, it's almost $11,000 to replace it. The car just isn't worth it. The good thing about this, we replaced this car, we put a 2022 car on. I will not ask for a car next year, so we'll skip a year because we'll have 3 cars with low mileage on them. So we'll be able to forego 1 full year without a car, which will save us that kind of money.
Are there questions about Article 8? All right, seeing none, we're going to move on to warrant Article 9. Article 9 is to see if the town will vote to establish a compensation for the town clerk to be provided by salary in lieu of statutory fees. Salary and benefits to be set by the Board of Selectmen at a level comparable in the board's sole discretion to town employees who have similar levels of responsibility and workload. Or the selectmen may act in any matter thereon. Majority vote is required, and explaining and presenting this one tonight will be the chair of the select board.
So I want to start out by saying that this is not about the current town clerk. whom the board supports and has pushed forward items the town has long requested, such as the Records Retention Committee, Records Retention Policy, and the beginnings of online payment and processing. This article is about the town clerk position and being able to always make it appropriate to whoever holds the office. As written, the prior article set a specific and numbered compensation package put forth as a warrant article with warrant article spending. It also set specific minimum office open requirements, and while nothing illegal has been done, there are 3 ways to go forward from that warrant article in the most appropriate manner. And this board is trying to do everything in the most appropriate manner possible. The first, and most appropriate if no other action is taken, would be to keep the value set in that warrant article as a never-changing number. The second would be to have a warrant article to change that value and/or open hours every year and fund the position via warrant article, as the previous warrant article did. We don't believe that either of those are the best answer, though, for a smooth, efficient, and consistent operation of the town. The third option, which we present to you today, is to allow the select board to be in charge and to set compensation appropriately going forward. The town clerk position is more like a normal job than most elected positions, and this article reflects that in accordance with the listed RSA 4125, much like the prior article, which was in 2019. However, this warrant article allows for changes by the select board when office hours increase or decrease out of necessity, as well as adjustment for experience, hours, or other changes when Webster eventually elects a new town clerk down the road. It also allows the select board to keep the benefits of the position current compared to town employees, such as the dental care that we've added for employees this year. Adoption of this article, rather than a decrease to the prior warrant value, is reflected in the current presented budget.
Are there questions about this warrant article? Tara? And then we'll let Emmett go first. Sure. Emmett?
So, just so I understand this, so will she be voted on by the voters of the town? Or will she become appointed by or whoever the town clerk is? Are we gonna vote?
Nothing changes it being an elected position. It is always and will always be an elected position.
So,
This is purely allowing us to set compensation as opposed to it being a solid number that's in a warrant article every year.
so back years ago, when they changed the road agent in town used to be voted on by the townsfolk, okay? He could tell the selectmen to go pound sand. He worked for the townsfolk. I just, it's not working the way it is now. I just, when you're elected by the town, by vote.
So I think I understand where you're going, and that is that as an elected official, that's something kind of on par with the select board. Because it's elected, we are responsible to the people, not to somebody else. So for example, it's different when one of our employees is responsible to the select board, who's ultimately responsible to the town. And so you're correct there, because that remains an elected position. They are completely and ultimately responsible to the people electing them. The change is that because of the way that the warrant article was written, and that the warrant article was taking funding as a warrant article, not a budget item, that now to put it back into the budget and do things appropriately and not have it come up every single year all the time, this is the most efficient path forward to do that and make everything appropriate so it can keep going forward basically in the manner that it has been.
In our prior town clerk is all good with all this?
So we have talked with her and there have been reservations. I'm not going to speak for her. I believe she'll have something to say afterwards. But having gone through legal, we believe this is the most efficient and most legal way forward to doing the review process and putting it into the budget item as it has been, instead of making it a special warrant article every year.
Okay, no, I'm just trying to educate myself, I'm not
Yep,
trying.
absolutely. And
This
so
is the first I've
that answers that.
heard.
Tara?
I would like to suggest that if she would like to, the current town clerk may speak next, because I think that would be the most appropriate before we have lots of other questions that probably also will ask what she thinks.
Not to put you on the spot.
Michelle, not to put you on the spot, do you want an opportunity to speak, or should we keep taking questions?
Kind of welcoming the other questions that people were having, to hear what the answers were.
Sure. So Tara, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I mean, aren't there state RSAs for an elected position? And I think we've been in a danger zone.
That is specifically RSA 4125 in this case, which outlines how we're doing this.
But, I mean, the town clerk always works with the statutory fees, all the different payments that she gets from registrations and dog licenses and everything else. And I think you were in a danger zone with the town policies, and you're gonna be in a huge danger zone with this. The selectmen may act in any matter thereon, because that just gives all future select boards carte blanche with doing anything they want. I think this is really bad, a very bad idea. When they get busier and busier, yes, you add hours and they get more money and everything else, but I don't think this is something that the select board should be controlling. This is, it's an elected position. I just think this is a danger zone that we're getting into. I don't think it's a good idea at all.
So I would like to say that I agree with part of what you said, and that is the fact that it is slightly dangerous to give complete control to a select board over this compensation. However, it's not really quite true. And I'm going to go back to two different things here to go on that. One is that the way that it should be getting done now, pursuant to the 2019 warrant article, is that there should be a warrant article each year to fund that position. Rather than do that, it has continually been put in the budget, as that was the expectation, and it was actually in the original budget presentation for that 2019 year, but then amended out at town meeting because the warrant article passed. So when looking at that, the first comment is that while it is up to the select board, it's also up to all of the voters, because the voters at town meeting can override that budget, either direction, up or down.
And with that, I will say, the voters, and with all due respect, the voters aren't educated. The voters didn't know about all the policies that we had, that you guys, this board has been doing a lot of work with redoing policies and everything. We've brought things up in the past that people had no clue was in these policies, and they were bad. I think this is a real danger zone. I think, the way the town clerk is working now, getting all the fees and everything else, and I think we ought to stay with what we're doing.
So that's not the way that the town clerk works now?
I know that she gets fees for everything else.
No. That ended with the warrant article in 2019.
Can you please tell me what the warrant article for 2019 said?
I would be happy to.
I think the words, "or the selectmen may act in any manner thereon," really dangerous. And you see how many people are here at this budget hearing? There's nobody here. How many people came to the town meeting last year? That was an odd year because outside and rain and all this stuff. But, you know, how many times have you seen people asking on Facebook, and I don't do Facebook, but, you know, I see emails, what's going on with the Clothespin Bridge? You know, people aren't educated as to what's going on.
So,
They don't know.
So let's let David explain, because I have to agree, I think there's some confusion over the current situation and then how this changes it. So let's
Yeah.
clarify that point.
So the main difference, and I'll read it in a second, but the main difference going from the 2019 to the current, what we are suggesting article, is that it allows for two things. One is that rather than a set value that would need to be brought up in a warrant article spend to follow best practice, rather than that, we can put it into the budget. The second thing is that rather than that set value, we can address and change it, or we can update and modify things, for example, when we have the dental coverage. And so to answer your question, the 2019 warrant article was to see if the town will vote to establish the compensation for the town clerk in accordance with RSA 4125 to $35,000 per annum in lieu of statutory fees to be paid on a biweekly basis and health insurance. Town clerk shall be open a minimum of 15 hours per week, including evening and or weekend hours, and an additional 4 hours during the last week of the month. So what we are changing is, in effect, that we can adjust this and put it in the budget in the most appropriate manner, instead of the most appropriate manner being this every year.
So David, just to clarify, I want to make sure I follow it. So 2019, we set the salary at 35.
Correct.
2020, we did what?
In 2020, it showed up in the budget and was approved at a, whatever the percentage increase was by the public body. And while that would not be illegal, based on the most correct action, it should either be done as a warrant article, because this was warrant article spending, or to be in charge of the select board so we can add it into the budget.
And in 21, we also budgeted, we did a budget
Correct.
amount.
2020 and 2021 did the same thing.
Did the budget. So now we're trying to get back to correct, because really the proper way would have been a budget.
We're trying to make the process we've been following be the most correct way to do it.
Does that provide some clarity to the question?
So did we do it incorrect in 20 and 21? Is that the gist of it?
I wouldn't necessarily say that it's incorrect, but it was not the most correct way. And we're trying to make basically the way that we've been doing it become the most correct way.
At least consistent?
So another alternative just is that this warrant article could be modeled on that with the dollar amount that we want to do. But then you run the risk of having, say the voters said no to that.
And then there would be no funding.
Yeah, so that's a problem versus
Right.
this is giving the select board the opportunity to set that wage and put it in the budget.
Correct.
Right, so people would see it there. And so that's why legal's advising this, because it makes it so that it can legally be in the budget without having to be raised by a warrant, if I'm following that correctly.
Yes, this was driven as a suggestion from legal.
Okay. All right, Jordan, and then we'll come back to Tara.
So I've got two questions actually. I'll stand up so I can see all these. The first question is, I'd like to know when the board voted as a majority to add this warrant article.
That would, which meeting was that?
Is it last time we were together, right?
I don't have the date in my mind.
Was this voted on with the majority?
It was done as a contingent because we intended to actually have a different warrant article. And that warrant article turned into this one because of changes in circumstance.
So this one specifically was not voted on majority by the select board. That's what I'm getting at. So there were not 2 out of 3 of you that gave approval for this.
We all talked about it,
Mhm,
and we all asked Dana to send it through legal.
mhm.
That's not voting.
I don't know if we had an official vote.
I don't think we
So if there
did.
was not an official vote, why is it here?
I thought we did, but
Well, and just to clarify a point, it's still a draft warrant
correct.
to be heard. You're giving feedback tonight.
Correct.
And then the board will be voting on these, because when it comes forward as the final warrant, it'll say recommended, 3-0 or 2-1 or whatever the
Correct.
case is. So this still is a draft form at this point, and I think that's gonna lead right into your second point, but I
So
could be
actually,
wrong.
without moving forward, yeah, so if it hasn't been voted on and it's here, the select board still needs to vote on it. If nothing was said tonight, then when were you planning on voting on this? Before town meeting? Because it doesn't sound like you guys were on the same page with this. Doesn't sound like you guys actually are 100% on it. I'm not saying it's a cover up and this isn't a dig at you guys. I just wanna, it doesn't sound like you guys are on the same page. And if I'm not bringing it up now, and you guys aren't on the same page, and this goes to town meeting without actually being properly voted on, then that's a whole new can of
So
worms.
thank you very much for bringing that up. And I actually want to kind of put our town administrator on the spot here, because I know he's been helping drive this with legal and putting all of the warrants together. And I know that we had talked with him and approved going forward with, and I'm trying not to say what the original concept of the warrant was, because I don't want to put members of the public on the spot. But that's kind of how we approved it, and then it turned into this because of those changes in circumstance.
Really quick though, it was the last one you said the last one was approved and it turned into this one. But don't you still have to vote on this one? Just because the last one was approved and then it changed, if there's a change, don't you guys have to vote to approve it?
Well, we did it conditionally, so I'll let
Yeah.
you speak to that for us.
I think the moderator has a good understanding on it, because after this public hearing, you're going to vote whether you support these warrant articles, whether you all support them to, or whatever the answer is. This was an article that you had decided to put on the warrant, and you will vote tonight after getting input from the citizens, whether you're going to go forward or withdraw it.
And to be clear, all of the other items, whether they're CRFs, ETFs, et cetera, those are all put on the warrant by consensus, not by actual vote.
But you will be voting tonight, or at some point,
Yes.
with a recommendation. So
Absolutely.
those still do need to be voted for a recommendation, yeah.
Okay, and then the second part of this is where it says, or may act in any manner thereon. So this is just a hypothetical thing. This is aimed at you guys and this is aimed at Michelle, but let's say, 5 years from now, new select board, new town clerk. Select board doesn't like the town clerk. What's to stop them from setting the wage at minimum wage? With it being a salary, you get minimum wage for your salary, so you work, 20 hours? So $7.50 for 20 hours a week, even if you're putting in 30 hours, that's just gonna drive out the town clerk. How are we gonna attract another town clerk? Because if we lose our town clerk, nobody's registering cars, and I'm out there watching for them, so. good luck. So how is this, how do we expect to keep this attractive to future town clerks and to keep future select boards from targeting the town clerk should they decide they don't like the town clerk? Because this right here gives them unlimited power on it.
So your concern is correct. And the reason for, this language came straight from legal. That's how Dana got it from legal, so that's why it's worded that way. The overall reasoning and the concern, but also to state that that exists currently. Because the select board is not in charge of what the town clerk does or how much the town clerk works. But the select board is in charge of the budget and the open hours of the office. And so as has been explained by legal, that is the current understanding. For The warrant article that existed in 2019, it was the public setting the minimum open hours. And so, of course, as a select board, whether we could or not, it would be silly to try to change that since it had been acted upon by the public. But because it's all budgeting, the public also has the end-all, say-all. So the public can also zero the line item or make it $100,000 if they want to. It's entirely in the public's hand because in the end, they vote on the budget. We just present it.
So again, what's to stop the select board from presenting a $7.50 an hour for 20 hours a week salary budget?
Nothing, just like there's nothing from preventing us from doing that now.
So who exactly do you talk to at legal? Because it doesn't sound like you've got the most accurate information there, as we just heard.
The town attorney is John Radigan, and the select board does not control the hours. So the 19 article, is it 19, should not have hours in there. They control funding, and they control the location of the clerk's office. And obviously, if I could just say this, the select board would be shooting themselves in the foot if they reduce someone's salary to the point that it wasn't attractive for a qualified person such as we have now to do it, because there aren't a lot of people that are qualified for this position, in my opinion.
I think we can all agree that there have been select boards in the past that haven't always made the right decision on every single option. So I mean, there is a possibility for this to go very south and then leave the town without a town clerk, which, I mean, is a ton of problems all in itself, so.
Well, that option is always every year. I mean, whether you have this article or not, it's there.
Voted on the town or voted by 3 people?
You know, the board could decide to do something with the funding. I mean, it's just a fact.
Yeah, the point there is that whether it's stated the way that we're stating it here, or whether it's presented as part of a budget, in any case, the select board is in charge of that. And so in any case, if that is to be changed, whether it's a budget line item or not, that would be the public.
All right. And like I said, I mean, I think that verbiage is setting up, it's a recipe for disaster. I mean, it's only a matter of time before that goes bad. With that language, may act in any matter thereon. That's a recipe for disaster for the select board and for the town's clerk in the future. I mean, you guys might get along, the next board might not, and then we're out of the town clerk.
That is absolutely a fair
I would
assessment.
recommend reviewing that verbiage as well.
So,
Excellent point. I think you've made that point pretty clear. Let's see if there are other folks who have a point that they want to make on this. Go ahead.
Are there other towns that do it this way? Do we know?
Yes.
Right.
Name one?
I could name several.
Okay.
The towns that I've worked in, Andover, Canaan, Peterborough, the select board controls the money for the town clerk.
Much bigger budgets than we have.
Oh,
Well, it doesn't.
It isn't the budget, it's just the way the law is written.
Well, I mean, they have more of a population and businesses and everything.
Oh, I agree,
So,
but I mean,
guys,
I would be willing to bet, I mean, it's a state law, so we're talking, other than a city, through towns that have elected town clerks, that's how it works.
so what if this is voted down? Is there like a contingent article that goes back to what you said before, that it has to be an article on the, warrant article every year?
we actually don't have one written and put in here. That's actually good feedback, and I don't know if we can add something of that nature at this point.
Yes.
We can, okay. So maybe we want want to do that. Before considering that, we did mention a couple of different options as to most correct. Obviously, the way that we've been doing it, while not most correct, has been deemed to be legal, even if not the best practice way to handle it. So we could do nothing, but we would prefer as a board to get everything as accurate and good going forward as possible.
David, just to make sure I understand the answer, because Julie's question was, if this fails, I'm looking at the budget and I'm seeing that the town clerk stipend is in the budget with a 3% increase added to it.
Exactly.
Correct.
So that would be the default. If this article failed, you've already planned a 3% increase for the town clerk.
Yeah, so much like the previous years, the way that has been deemed legal but not the most correct process, it would, if this failed, default to that process at this point in time.
And then if this passes, you've already budgeted a 3% increase, so the intent of the board is actually right here, which is
Yes.
to pay a 3% increase to the town clerk.
Correct.
So before, you had said that, what, in 2019 or 2020, I think it was 2019, the more correct way to do it was to have it on a warrant.
Correct.
So if this doesn't pass, why would we not do it the more correct way and have it as a warrant?
That would certainly be an option, and we can talk about that and look at adding an alternative warrant article for it, which it looks like we should probably have further conversations on this before we go forward with our final.
Yep. Ron, you had your hand up first, and then we'll come back to Michelle, who's ready to speak.
My understanding of 4125 is that the town meeting determines the compensation for the town clerk. Not a personnel policy and not the governing board body, which is the board of selectmen. And your legal is telling you that that's not correct?
What our legal is saying is that any change from the value that was listed in that warrant article and or not continuing to fund it with that warrant article is not the best practice. And that it should either be a continuing warrant article that we see each year, or it should be something of this nature so that we can adjust it as we see fit.
What I'm saying is that as I read 4125, that's the way it needs to be. The town meeting determines the compensation, not the board of selectmen. So it should be every year, according to 4125, it should be a separate warrant article stating the compensation for the town clerk. And I don't see how your legal can tell you that that's not correct if it's written in the statute. That way.
Well, so I can't answer for legal, but I will go along with what Dana mentioned earlier, in that several other towns do it this way, and it has been deemed legal to do it this way. So that's how it's been going. Maybe there is a court case or something that they are looking at that says that's an appropriate way to do it. I couldn't tell you. But
I hate that maybe stuff.
And I agree with a couple other folks that said that the way you have written this article is really setting yourself up for something that could really happen in a bad way. I'm sorry.
so while that gets taken care of, I
It's
would
like a
to
lullaby
suggest
back
that
there.
we further discuss this and then talk to legal and ask about a better or different way of writing something that may accomplish a similar goal, in making it so that it doesn't have to be an issue. But duly noted on all fronts.
Yeah, it just seems like it's too open-ended the way you have it written.
I'm going to actually jump myself in, just to give my opinion for a second, and then we'll come back to Michelle. But the concern I have is the open-ended nature of it, and the fact is that this has been a multi-year situation with the town clerk's compensation. And we have an incredibly talented town clerk who
Absolutely.
does a phenomenal job, and it just feels weird that every year we keep sort of having one more thing come along. And I think it's really, I mean, I just want to say out loud how much I appreciate what Michelle does for our town, and I think the select board has a duty to get it right and to stop kind of bringing this up every year, right? So we want to honor the person and really have the right thing that's in place. And if this is the final straw to get to that, then let's do that. But I do worry that this is, I read that and I'm like, wow, you know, the next person, and you're right, Jordan, we've seen select boards target departments in the town of Webster. It has happened, and so we need to make sure we're smart about the way we proceed. That's my personal opinion. Moderator hat back on.
And-
Michelle, it's your opportunity.
And to your point, that's why we're doing this, so that it can be not something that doesn't have to come up all the time, is why it was worded this way, instead of set up as a continuing every year warrant article.
Michelle.
Okay.
Michelle, since you're so quiet, why don't you come to the microphone? I know you hate that.
Trying to make me more nervous, Steve.
Now, because you're so quiet all the time.
How about if I talk loud?
You don't
Do you want a mic?
No?
Okay.
All right, speak loud, please.
Nowhere in the statute of 4125 does it give carte blanche to the select board to set the town clerk's salary, compensation, benefits, nothing. So I think that needs to be revisited, because it says that it is at each town, at the annual town meeting, is determined the rate and amount of compensation. It gives the select board the authority to present the budget to the taxpayers, but it also gives the opportunity for, if somebody doesn't like it, to change it from the floor. So that's that. And this is a little blip from a 2006 article from the Town and City magazine on town clerks. What do they do, and do they have a boss? The compensation of the town clerk is set by the legislative body at town meeting and can be statutory fees collected, a set salary in lieu of fees, or a combination of both. The legislative body may also include insurance benefits as part of the compensation package. The town clerk submits their budget request to the board for your consideration, and then to a budget committee, but we don't have that, so we don't have to worry about that. The legislative body, the voters, are the ultimate decision-making power over all budget requests presented at the annual meeting. Thus, if the select board recommends a budget for the town clerk's office that the clerk disagrees with, they take it up with the voters at the annual meeting. I think that the part that's the most upsetting and why we're in this place at the budget hearing is because you just put this out there. You talked to me twice already when I presented my budget to you, and you didn't say anything. You did, in all fairness, you brought up an article, you brought up a draft of a warrant article, but it's changed considerably. You told me, Dave, 3 times that it had gone before legal, and then after talking to Dana afterwards, he said it hadn't been approved by legal.
I was getting my information from Dana that it was coming from legal. That's where specifically the language came from.
So, all right. And the town had already voted to establish the town clerk's compensation by salary in lieu of statutory fees. So I think it's a little redundant on this warrant article that you're putting out here tonight for us. And it was at the 2019 meeting that the voters voted it in for that,
Correct.
or to eliminate the combination.
Correct.
So is it more about the second part of the article that you are presenting? The part that is taking the power away from the voters and putting it in the select board's hands?
But that's certainly not the intent of the board.
I think that's how it reads, though.
So that's a very valid criticism of the way that it's written, and duly noted. We should definitely look at that and talk about it and go back to legal again.
With so few town employees, what position is it that you are comparing the town clerk's position to in order to set the salary and the hours and when you talk about the level of responsibility and workload?
Dana, you had most of these conversations with legal for us. Can you provide more information here? Because I don't want to go from, what somebody said and was interpreted, and then what someone else said and was interpreted, and then what I'm interpreting.
Right. I think what I had talked to you, Michelle, about was the article, the petition article. I'd like to see it, Dave. The petition article for the combination job. That's what I'm remembering that we had talked about. As far as comparable, I think that's just a general term as far as what other full-time employees. I mean, obviously, we have few employees, and they all have very great responsibilities. And I'm not diminishing any of them, but I think it is just a general statement. So it wasn't a particular position to compare it.
So that this article is ambiguous then? Like, you're saying that you're gonna relate it to town employees, but then there's nobody that's comparable. And you gave me a copy of the warrant article that Dave had read to me on the January 3rd meeting with the board. And it's about this Article 9, but it's been broadened and you've removed the statute. That this is specifically the article that, it wasn't the combined town clerk.
Okay, I'm sorry, I guess I don't recall that.
I just have one more statement.
Absolutely.
For the record, I feel that this warrant article is redundant and illegal, and I will continue to speak out against it. Every resource that I've referred to mentions nothing about the select board being granted authority over the town clerk's compensation and or benefits. This has been ongoing since 2015, and I thought it was clarified and put to bed after the vote in 2019. You can say it's the town clerk's position and not the person, but you're not in my shoes. It's stressful, and I think it is an embarrassment to the town when they see elected officials not communicating and not working together. Again, this is from that same article in the Town and City magazine. And it says, while there's no direct supervision of the town clerk by the selectmen in the way that town employees are supervised, cooperation and a spirit of teamwork on the part of all town officials is essential. Only by working together would the goal of serving the town to the best of their abilities be achieved. I'm a reasonable person, and yet you've been secretive about this for the whole budget season. I talked with Dana in September about the town clerk, after the town clerk's conference, about combining the town clerk and tax collector positions because the tax collector was not going to rerun in March of 23. So I've been in front of the board twice, and you had every opportunity to discuss this with me then. And in fact, it seems to be a repeat of last year when at the last minute, the town clerk, me, was blindsided when you amended the compensation with no discussion to me then. Call me sensitive, but I've worked damn hard for this town and I'm not appreciating what is happening. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to provide feedback on warrant article number 9? Tara, and then we'll come back to Jordan.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to ask, the compensation right now for the town clerk is in the big, the 1,600,000, correct?
Correct.
So what happens with all the fees that get collected? You know,
The salary was in, and the way that it was written, everything is in lieu of the fees, so the fees go to the town as revenue.
So all those fees for driver's license, you know, registrations and dogs and everything, where does that go as income for the town? And
Into
how,
the revenue stream.
how does it compare to what you guys were doing with setting as her salary?
So the way that the fees come in before the warrant article just went to the town clerk. The town didn't really see them. The way that it is after that warrant article, rather than going to the town clerk, they go to the town, and then the town pays the clerk a salary wage, basically. The explanation at the time when that was passed was that they were considered to be equivalent. And so the outlay from the town to the town clerk at the $35,000 per annum was expected to be the same as the input of fees at that time as explained by the board. I was sitting out there at the time, so I really don't have more information than that.
So why are we playing with this? Why don't, because I love what Michelle said. I love everything she said. Why are we playing with the fees and everything and getting involved in making this, you know, more complicated? Why don't we just do what she was doing? I mean, I know she gets extra hours because every job, you never know how many hours you're gonna be working. I don't understand why if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know, this is what the state says to do, and, you know, she's extra hours. And then I do have another question about the doubling of the deputy town clerk. You know, it's a little bit more than double. What was going on there?
So if she'd like to, I will let our town clerk speak
I
further,
would
but that
love that.
was
I didn't
based
want to be
on her
rude.
request that we double the hours available so that any future deputy town clerk would actually be able to be trained.
So this is just about training?
We have some other previous assistants for town clerks here. We also have our actual town clerk, but it is, as anyone can see that's walked in there,
More hours.
the town clerk position is not simple.
Oh, I
And it's
understand that. I
involved,
ran for town clerk once,
and
and I'm
so-
glad somebody else got it.
Having a deputy town clerk be fully trained to be able to take over should something ever, hopefully never happen, does require lots of time.
This, doubling the hours is not gonna fully train a deputy, but it is gonna give them more time in the office and experience.
So,
It is for,
so it's like on-the-job training? That's what you're saying?
well, they would have to go to the certifications
Yeah,
for
yeah,
training.
yeah,
But
I
yes, the
understand that.
plan was to be open every Friday morning.
Oh, okay. Well, that's, because I hadn't heard.
Once somebody came in and was, was trained,
Right,
but that was my goal, to have it every Friday morning.
okay. So just adding more open hours to the public, right? Because I hadn't heard that. This is why I was wondering how that was working into, the system that you've got right now. So, it was just a little surprising to see that the deputies' hours were a little bit more than double, so,
Because right now it's 5 hours a week
right.
for like 40, 50 weeks, I think. So I upped the number of weeks that I had planned on her working
Right.
for him.
And I don't know if this is, and pardon me for, if it's not a question that I can ask, but I was going to ask Michelle, which way do you like it? Do you like it to get the stipends and all this stuff? Or do you want to go through them, but the way they wanted to do it
This one, does it matter?
She already said she was gonna vote against it.
It doesn't,
or how it is currently maybe.
I don't understand why it can't stay the way it is currently. And I'm still not getting getting the explanation of the warrant article versus it being in the budget, because that's how it's been for the last
3 years.
so many years.
3 years.
Well, it's still been in the budget as a stipend and fees. But since 2019, or 20 and 21, it's been in as a salary. But still in that budget that it's
Can you
in.
speak to that at all? Because I know you got that as a suggestion from legal.
I need to, I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure, I didn't hear what Michelle said.
All right, she's basically asking why can't it just stay the same way with the 2019 article?
Well, I don't see why it couldn't. That was one option. It is, as you mentioned, it was legal to do it the way it's been done the last 2 years, I guess, 20 and 21. This was a way, I think that what the idea was to clean that up and make it plainer. But as far as being able to continue to do it, and it is in this year's operating budget, yes, you could go keep it the way it is.
So I'm going to try to keep us on time. I called Jordan next. John, I'll come to you right after.
So I'm just curious, like, I obviously can't speak for Michelle on whether or not she feels targeted, but with this coming up as often as it is, I mean, just from my point of view, it does look like there's a target on her right now. Not just the position, but Michelle herself, and I think there's other people that would probably agree with that. And I'm not saying that you guys are doing it intentionally, but my fear is when she decides she's done and she doesn't want to play this game anymore, how are we going to attract another town clerk? Because the other town clerks are going to see what's been going on, and how are we going to convince somebody to come to our town and play the same game? Well, yeah, but I mean, how are we going to convince somebody to come in and do your job if this is something that they know has been going on?
Yeah, and I guess to answer that, the reason for doing this was in hopes that we wouldn't have to have it be a thing. And I completely understand the perception of a target. I can assure you that that is not the intention of this board, but I absolutely agree with that as a perception.
John?
With the power that I see that this gives the selectmen, I compare this with the same town policy of the sale of town properties, where at the end of the town policy, it reads that the selectman does not have to follow any of the town policy of town lands. And you guys have even admitted that that town policy is a pretty poor town policy, where it says that you don't actually have to follow that policy. And I compare this pretty much in the same category. And I bet you probably haven't even changed that town policy of the sale of town properties.
John, just
And-
stick to this article.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm just comparing these two policies being the same, and so I do compare the two together. So I'm tying it in with this. So I do believe it does make this article comparable. Because this makes the power of this policy giving these selectmen the power to do pretty much what they want to do with this article. Just like the sale of town properties. Gives them the power not to follow the policy and be able to do whatever they want to do with it. And So I really think that this article should go away. And I don't know what the rest of the folks in here think, but that's my opinion.
I think a lot of people are on your side, but let's just double check with Emmett, who hasn't weighed in yet and had a thought.
No, I, no blame on nobody, but I just think we just need to back up. Michelle and I have had a differences over the years, but she is an awesome person and she gives it all to this town, like a lot of us do. You know, I just think we just look it over, we all work together, come up with something that's gonna work for us. And everybody works together and smile.
So just, it seems like we've provided a lot of feedback from the audience tonight. We know the select board is going to be reconsidering what to do with this warrant article. I'm just going to ask if there's anything new that needs to be said. Otherwise, in the spirit of time, I'd like to move on. So, Tara, I can't tell if it's a hand. Is it something new?
It's a hand.
Go ahead.
Just a very short sentence. I agree with Michelle, our town clerk. We need to scrap warrant article number 9. Get rid of it.
All right, so I think we're ready to move on from this group. We certainly have an audience at home who probably have opinions also, and I'm sure the select board will find something in their inbox later this evening based on folks at home who are viewing along, so.
Well, I just want to make it clear, there is, you know, I'm not going to speak for everybody here, I'm going to speak for myself, but any of the intentions of this is not to mess at all with our town clerk. Yeah, we're fortunate, very fortunate. I've been registered in a lot of different towns, and she does a great job, and she's on point, and she knows her stuff, so.
And she's on time.
And she's on time, that's right. But, yeah, Michelle, I think he's, you know, we're, and then legal, yeah, that was some strong words, and it probably, you know, I see where everybody's coming from, because, you know, I can sit here and honestly say that's not what I'm going to do, but I can't tell you what the next people are gonna do,
Yeah, and
But-
that's absolutely a fair.
you know? So, no, we appreciate, I think this town has come a long ways. I mean, just kind of getting involved, maybe I haven't been involved before, but definitely, everybody does a good job and does their job. So it's nice to see.
All right, let's move on to warrant article 10.
Thank you.
So 10 is to see if the town will raise and appropriate the sum of $5,000 for the purpose of ongoing restoration and painting of the old meeting house. This was submitted by petition, so I want to see if anybody from the Historic Society is here to speak to that.
No.
I'm from the Historical Society, but I was not prepared to speak about this, but it's pretty standard language, and it's been a request that has come before the voters before. But anyone that drives by the meeting house will see that progress is being made, and they'll have more than enough information to speak on this at town meeting.
Perfect. John?
I believe you're gonna find that they've taken some money from the state, a grant.
Yes,
So, excuse me, I got the floor, please.
I believe they got the L-chip grant.
And
So it's still in for you.
so now you're gonna find that the state is gonna dictate what can be done, how it has to be done. And they've got a lot of involvement on what's gonna happen. The town does not, and the Historical Society actually does not own this building anymore. The state does. They have a huge interest in this. So I really don't know if the town wants to start funding any money into this, because the state has so much control over what's going to be spent, how it's going to be spent, because the town does not have control of this building anymore. The Historical Society does not have control of this building anymore. They gave that control away. And I don't think this town wants to get involved in giving any money to this Historical Society anymore. It is a crying shame what has happened to the Historical Society up there.
So hopefully somebody from the Historical Society will be here at town
Well,
meeting.
it's a whole different group up there today.
But they'll be here to speak to it and to explain
I
exactly
understand
what the
that.
status is.
But they're not here tonight.
Right.
And this is, we're here to speak about this tonight.
I hear
And
you.
I am speaking about it.
Mhm. And I'm just explaining that at town meeting, there will be people here who can speak to
There has
and
been
answer those
horrendous
questions.
amount of damage done to that historical building.
John, I would encourage you to reach out to the Historic Society on that one, because I really don't know about it.
I do, and I'm speaking about it tonight.
Heard.
And I'm trying to let people know about what's been happening up there.
And all I'm saying is we need an opportunity for them to also speak. So they're not here, they're not prepared to do
This is
that.
not a place to speak about it.
There's nobody from the Historic Society, John.
We're here to spend money on what?
But
Am I
it's a-
wrong? Is this not the place? to
No, but it's a
talk about-
petition, it's a petition warrant article. The board is not prepared to speak to a petition warrant article, and there's nobody from the Historic Society here to speak to it, so.
Is that
your
my
con-
fault?
Nope, your concern's been heard. I'm hoping somebody is at home watching, and they'll come prepared that night or that day to speak. All right, let's move back. So at this point, we've concluded the warrant. What is the deadline for petition articles to come in? Has that passed?
This passed, it was the first.
So this is the warrant that will be presented at town meeting. There are 10 items on here. It's a nice lean warrant. And so that should be able to help us also with conducting an efficient meeting. I just want to pause for a second and go through elected officials. So somebody has to be running for a select board. Do they want a chance to say anything? Dee, we know you pretty well.
Yeah, right, I don't have to say anything else, but I'm running again.
And you are the sole person running for the seat.
Yep,
Although we know that write-ins can also be successful. So
Yep.
I'm sure Dee will be
Campaigning.
campaigning and letting people know. I will say as moderator, I've also refiled and will be on the ballot and would appreciate support from folks. Anybody else who's an elected official that will be on the ballot want to speak? That's everybody who's here tonight? Perfect. Before we end, because there's a school thing I want to bring up, so let me just see if there's any other town business that we want to address tonight. Anything for the town of Webster before I shift to the school district? Okay, so school district has already had their budget hearing. Folks in Webster should know that they have been served recently with a Senate Bill 2 petition warrant article. This had happened a few years ago, but that question is going to be back in front of the Merrimack Valley voters to see if they want to adopt the provisions of RSA 4013 or the Senate Bill 2 format. Remember, that changes from a town meeting where people can go to vote on the school budget to a deliberative session where people go to vote on the budget that will then be voted on by ballot. So it's a shift in the way the school district is able to operate. By law, they are required to hold a public hearing in each of the pre-existing towns. They have posted on their website that they will be here in Webster at the elementary school on February 8th at 5:30 for the public hearing in Webster.
At 5:30.
So I wanted to announce that to the public so that you know. They are then in Salisbury on the 9th, Boscawen on the 10th, at the high school in Pennacook on the 14th, and at Loudon on the 15th. So you don't have to attend just the Webster meeting. If you can't make it, you can attend one of the other hearings and have your opportunity to have input. But that's a really key thing for us to pay attention to because it will change the way the school business is conducted, and that's obviously the majority of our tax dollars. This year, the school meeting will be held on Friday, March 4th, so it's a Friday night at 6:30. And I believe that that will be on the warrant that day to be voted on by paper ballot. And so folks should know that that's what's happening at the school district. And again, Friday, March 4th is the date of the meeting at the high school at 6:30. All right, anything else for
Just about the school, I was gonna
the
ask you.
school district side?
Yeah, it's February 8th for Webster.
February 8th at 5:30 at Webster Elementary.
At the elementary, 5:30, thank you.
You're welcome. Jordan?
While we're on the school thing, I wanted to know that while I was at the PD, I got a call. Merrimack Valley is going to be learning from home tomorrow.
Remote learning day tomorrow due to the ice and snow. Yep. Does anybody know who filed for school board election?
I don't know.
I have that.
Because I think there's a Webster seat up,
There's
right?
two. Kim Kenny, who lives on Down Street, and there was somebody else I didn't know.
So 2 people running for 1 seat. There is a contested seat in Webster,
In
so
Webster.
that's
And there's
good to know.
there's 3 people running in Salisbury. Peggy Jones.
Jones,
Blanchard,
Peggy Jones.
Louise Andrus,
Ugh.
Raymond something.
Wilson?
Yes.
Yep.
And then there's 2 in Boston.
So just a reminder that all school board seats are elected at large, so you don't just vote for Webster reps, you vote for all seats. So I encourage people to educate themselves on that also. We've missed the hearing, so you'll need to educate yourself before that. All right, anything else for the good of tonight? I want to thank everybody for coming out. Drive home safely and be safe tomorrow with the storm. And we'll look forward to seeing everybody for as normal a town meeting as we can have this year. So thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
We were gonna make it easy.
I think this is.
But they pointed out it was at home.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying.
Are we still on? Yeah, we must be.
They may change,
Yes.
and if it does, I'll.
I think we need to at least briefly keep our meeting down.
Thank you, Mike, you do a great job.
I guess thank you.
My battery died?
Thank you.
Eric Hansen?
Who's running in Boston?
Eric Hansen. Does anybody know Eric Hansen?
Owen Harrington and Jen LaCasse.
I don't know either one of them.
Owen got elected last
Owen's
year.
sitting.
Oh, okay.
Or he got appointed when somebody resigned.
Yeah, he's currently sitting.
And Jen LaCasse is Jane's daughter-in-law.
Oh, my God.
And she ran last year but wasn't elected.
Yep.
Oh,
And then
wow.
Salisbury is Raymond Wilson.
Yeah, Peggy Jones is on it now.
She's on now.
And Ray,
What?
She took Hillary's seat.
Oh, yeah, that's right, Hillary did an encore, I forgot about that.
and I knew Ray because he was on a small school study for Salisbury, so he was very vocal there.
I know, I feel bad, of all those years I spent on the school board, and 30 years, and I don't really know what's going on anymore.
I don't know either person who founded it.
I know Kim from school because
I thought you were gonna.
Yeah, that's just what I was gonna say, I thought you were gonna.
So my daughter is the student representative on the board.
Oh, yeah.
And she was adamant that if I ran, she would quit.
So next year.
You would have gotten a real vote.
I had at least 10 people ask me.
I'm sure you did. I almost emailed it.
I got an email from Bruce.
Well, when she's off and out of school, that's a great thing you can be in.
I've been told by a prior board member I would be crazy to do it.
I was there, join the club.
The people who care are crazy enough to do it.
Pretty much. I did say I needed a hobby, so I'm almost an empty nester at this point.
Well, I spent 30 years in America, and we did a lot of things, we did a lot of good
It was
things.
funny because Celie came and talked to me.
Oh, Sealy's great.
And she wanted me to run, and then I told her, she was like, oh, I told her.
She's great too.
So I just, sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but I just want to say that we are still technically streaming and everything else.
Not I'm standing in front of it.
Well, okay. Well, something was streaming. You're right there at the mic. But, yeah, so feel free to continue to to talk, but I want us to be able to end, so.
Yes.
How can they do that when you need?
So, at least me, I think, at least me, we're under the impression that we had to do something about the clerk warrant article, and that's why we have it this way with language from legal, as suggested by legal. At this point, it doesn't seem like this is the correct way forward, even if legal thinks that this is the way to make what we were doing appropriate. So, what are the other options?
I guess I would just like to say, and I think that the attorney was giving you a suggestion on how to fix what needed a little fixing from previous years. Now, having said that, there's always the element of having the people involved. And I think there's a lot of misconception as far as, it's still up to the legislative body. They vote the budget, whether it's the operating budget or you know, a warrant article by itself. Past 2 years, you have just added it into the budget, and theoretically, people are still approving it because they're approving the operating budget. I don't know if it's worth the pain at the moment to go through trying to correct it. I didn't realize it would be such a problem. I don't see much change to it.
It's, I'll tell you what it is, it's the lawyer's language, which we didn't, that's not what we had discussed, the last language, that was new.
The last couple of words.
That was new, like,
Yeah, it's the legal.
yeah, that's strong, that does, and I can see the concerns, granted, not our intention, by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, and I'm not disagreeing with them either.
Yeah, I mean, but I don't know what he was quite thinking when he said it quite
So I
like
guess my
that.
question then is, if we wanted to, and this would be a future meeting discussion, but if we wanted to do a different warrant article after discussing something with Michelle, the town clerk.
Wow, it's
Is that even possible for us at this point? And or are we allowed to simply remove the warrant article at this point? Or because we are so far along the process, is it set and that's what's there, and the only thing we can do is say we don't agree with it?
No, you can remove it.
Okay.
You have that option until the 21st, where you have to post it. If you were to add a different warrant article, you'd have to probably have another public hearing, so that people could have an experience.
My personal opinion is I think we should just junk it.
I mean, by no means were that any of our intentions to open up
right.
another can of worms.
Right,
that
exactly.
was not.
And I think,
And legal is strong, I mean, when it says, you know, I agree, I don't think, granted, we don't know what might happen in 3 years, or, you know what I mean, but you know what I mean, so,
I guess
they feel comfortable with it?
Yeah, I mean,
But you know, you talk to any lawyer, they'll have, if you talk to 3, they'll all have saying different things, so.
Well, I know.
and that's why I explained it that way, like, we're trying to do this the most correct way possible according to legal. Obviously, the town doesn't like it.
Well, and the language is strong.
with all due respect, people reading the law, everyone's interpreting it.
A little differently, oh, absolutely.
And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I'm just saying that obviously the lawyer's gonna, if we went to a different lawyer,
But that's the thing, I think, personally, I think we should just, we don't need this aggravation this year. And I make a motion to get rid of it.
And I would second that.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, let's remove that.
all right?
And,
So, can we go above?
yeah, I guess the question would be, talk with legal about, like next time we have some other conversation, talk about this and say, these are the concerns that the citizens have had. We really don't want this to keep coming up for the town clerk. What is the most appropriate way? And then make sure, don't even come to us with that answer. Come to Michelle and have that worked out.
Well, before you,
Because
I guess
we've tried to do this as nice as possible. We tried to include her, but obviously not enough for her desires. And so,
Yeah, I think we're all trying to be as inclusive as possible, and it's unfortunate, and I'm not saying that we couldn't improve it, but...
So I guess my suggestion would be, after talking with legal, take any concerns legal has about that warrant article and how we need to move forward to Michelle, and try to talk with her to see if you and her can come up with an amicable solution that would
Be
make
safe
sense
tonight.
to put on next year's warrant article. And
You guys be careful tomorrow.
whether it does or does not, that's I think
It's gonna be nasty.
Really,
Yeah.
I'm supposed to take my family to Concord to catch a bus to go to the airport. I don't know if they'll be going.
Thank you very
Just say, I'll
much.
bet you make big guys. I hope you still like me.
love you.
You
Well,
brought
I
up
still
very
smile.
salient points.
We'll give it a whirl.
I know if it
may
was
not
my
be
family, I'd get them there one way or another.
Intention.
Yes.
I don't care what I had to do.
But it's absolutely right that not every board is the same. We call it
No, I want them to...
So thank you very much for the very salient points.
Get going, though.
They weren't necessarily what we hoped we would hear from people, but everybody has very good points. And we just put all of
Oh my God. Don't tell him.
Well, we already told him he can't leave. 'cause
That's
we'll
right.
shoot him for
You
you.
know, I...
We'll pick at your house if you think you're gonna leave.
So are,
You have to be there so long.
Dana,
Yes, I'd like you to go on each one if you support or non-support. I'm hearing what you're saying on 9 as I'm getting some more information from legal. I'm going to be talking,
some future.
but it's future. It's
Yeah,
not,
right.
it's not this
Correct.
year.
Yeah,
So
right,
we're
exactly.
doing that. What I would like,
Oh, I couldn't let that one pass. Thank you for lowering the computer budget. Remember when, before you were selected, that thing was so out of control, and you said, no, you gotta do this. I saw that.
We're doing what we can.
Yeah, no, I noticed that, and that was, thank you. You guys are doing a great job.
And I know everyone's been talking, but we did, as official meeting, we did just vote as a board to can warrant article number 9.
Good, because she's a peach.
So
And-
I'm sure she'll hear that from
Let
us
sleeping
shortly,
dogs
but
lie. Yeah,
Right.
great,
If
thank
it ain't broke, don't fix it.
you. Exactly. Doing a good
we
job.
wanted it to
From
be
the
as
old
simple
school.
and easy, and it didn't turn out that way.
Exactly,
So-
old
So
school.
we'll get rid of it.
And I think that's what we're getting back to. We're getting back to old school. So,
Yep.
anyway, except for computers, I still can't figure them out.
I'm with you there.
Oh, good, he's grabbing her, so we can tell him directly. That's the best way.
This says I've done like 3 hours of exercise.
What is this? 3 hours of what?
Exercise.
Oh, good. We should start walking.
I think we're just going to be minute. I thought it would be appropriate if you told Michelle your decision.
That's
You
good,
can
right
take
in
this.
front of the
That's right
TV.
in front of the camera.
It's still going?
Yes, we are still in a meeting.
You can sit there, sit right, and I'll...
So I wanted to make sure, and the board wants to make sure that you are absolutely hearing this tonight, right now.
They shouldn't have had it because they had a ring date.
You are not the target, and we're not trying to target you. We don't want to target you. We were hoping to do this to correct things and do things as the most correct going forward as possible, so that hopefully it won't be an issue going forward. part of that was also driven by we could take care of it at the same time as the combination. But since that didn't happen, this part remained, went through legal, and language changed by legal into what we see today. Especially after all the comments, and knowing that it would be very hard pressed for anyone to find that what we are doing is illegal, even if not the most correct way forward. We as a board just finished voting to completely remove warrant article number 9 from the warrant. It will not be there.
And no intentions for you to have to sat out there and felt like your defense, that's not.
Yeah.
That's not,
None at all.
that was not, I mean, I'm pretty sure that's the way they feel, but that's the way I feel. We
Oh,
just,
right.
and
Especially
then legal
after-
comes back, but then they give it to you, and they throw it in front of your face, and it did sound strong. We get where you're coming from, but it was not to,
Right.
by any stretch.
And I, while we were not, I completely understand that perception, especially in lieu of last year, which, again, we took from that we needed to do a better job on that, and we tried. And
So
I
it'll
think we did
just
some better
stay
job, but
in
not good enough, so.
The operating budget as it is?
That is the best path forward, unless we craft some other warrant article, which we couldn't do without another hearing.
We're not doing that.
Is to leave it the way it is, because it's been that way.
Is it gonna be another thing next year though?
So that is the question that we have told Dana, go back to legal, tell them we had a problem with this, and so did the town. And then before even coming to the board, we want Dana to take whatever legal says to you, so that you, Dana, and legal can figure out what the best way to address it is. That way you can bring it forward and we can make it happen.
I like that. We're working as a team.
Yeah, but
Which we always wanted and tried to do, but too many people in between with communications, and so.
streamline it a little bit more.
Get a lawyer involved and then it's a mess.
Yeah. But so that's
But we
where
don't
we
want you
are,
to feel harassed by any stretch.
and if it turns out that there's something that the lawyer says needs to happen, and you and Dana and the lawyer can figure out the best way, then we'd like you to suggest that as a warrant article for next year. But thank you for everything you're doing. We're sorry you had to go through it.
Yes. And quite frankly, too, even downstairs when we were talking, you should have kind of just let him have a kid. Because, you know what I mean?
Would have probably been more composed than I was on
I know, but so, like, you want us to communicate, don't hold back like that. I mean, I didn't do this to harass people.
No.
I said I just, like everyone, you want to keep your taxes as flat as possible and still give some services and have good town clerks and good administrators, and you know what I mean? Because that's important, otherwise, as we're getting accused of the way things ran before, it's not the way.
Yeah, and
We wanna run it.
we were just trying to make it easy and streamlined, not grab control, but especially once the language came through, then yeah, it does sound that way, and the points were salient. So.
Yeah, that's scary.
Anyway, that's all. Thank you very much. We're sorry.
You want us to book in his notes?
Don't steal my work.
So Dana wanted us to do the up-down vote, and I guess since that was, I think, we don't vote on 10, we don't vote on 2. It's going to be the budget through 9 doesn't exist, so it'll be the budget through 8. And those are all the things that we put forward. Are there any dissents?
No.
All right, I would make a motion that we go in favor 3 and 0 for warrant articles 3 through 8.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And that's all the ones that we have to speak to and vote on.
Yep.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else we have?
No?
Perfect.
Thank you for
I
your
would move that
patience.
we close the meeting at 8:50.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
This is a short meeting, Dave.
That's me, that's what I was thinking. I thought we could hang out a little bit longer.
I thought we could make it even shorter, but
Yeah, well, we could have at that last hour.